If you're just tuning into this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of our heartwarming narratives. Now, let's dive into a journey that will make us reflect on what truly matters in life. The rain fell relentlessly over the Rochester Country Club, as if the sky was mourning too. Nathan Whitmore, 32 years old and a high school history teacher, adjusted his black tie for the third time as he watched his family members settle into the chairs arranged under the white tent. The polished oak casket of his grandfather, Roland Whitmore, was positioned at the front, adorned with a bouquet of white lilies. Nathan stood back, feeling like a stranger in his own family. His Uncle Vernon and Aunt Beatrice arrived in a black Bentley, she dabbing non-existent tears with a silk handkerchief, while his cousin Preston, in his sharp Armani suit, greeted guests as if he were at a business meeting. Mallory, his cousin, had just posted a grieving selfie for her 200,000 followers, the carefully chosen black and white filter intended to convey the appropriate gravity. "Nathan, dear, I'm so glad you could make it," Aunt Beatrice said, her French perfume leaving a trace in the air as she gave him a light hug. "Your grandfather always spoke of you, in his own way." Nathan merely nodded, feeling the weight of unspoken words. Roland Whitmore had been an enigma in his life, present but always distant, except for those Sunday afternoons spent playing chess. Those rare moments were true connections with the man who built a shipping empire from the ground up. The ceremony unfolded as expected, filled with elaborate eulogies and carefully selected stories. Nathan remained silent, his mind wandering back to his last chess match with his grandfather just 3 weeks prior. Roland had seemed different that day, more present, his blue-gray eyes sharper than ever. "The best moves are the ones your opponent never sees coming," Roland had said, unexpectedly moving his queen. "Checkmate in 3. Now sitting under the tent as the officiant spoke about legacies and traditions, those words echoed in Nathan's mind like an omen. After the funeral, the Whitmores gathered in the club library for the reading of the will. Mr. Harwick, the family attorney for 3 decades, adjusted his glasses and opened a worn leather folder. "Let's proceed," he announced in his monotone voice. "I'll begin with the main provisions." Nathan observed the anxious faces of his relatives. Preston leaned forward, hands clasped over his knees, eyes fixed on the lawyer. Mallory discreetly checked her phone under the table, while Vernon and Beatrice maintained carefully composed expressions. "To Vernon and Beatrice Whitmore, I leave our property in the Hamptons and my diversified investment portfolio," Mr. Harwick read. Aunt Beatrice squeezed Vernon's arm, a satisfied smile appearing on her lips. "To Preston Whitmore, my grandson, I leave the majority control of Whitmore Shipping Industries, on the condition that employment levels are maintained for at least 1 year. Preston couldn't suppress a sigh of relief, followed by a triumphant smile directed at Nathan. "To Mallory Whitmore, my granddaughter, I leave my penthouse in Manhattan and the yacht Serenity." Mallory finally looked up from her phone, her face lighting up. "The Serenity? Seriously?" She was already mentally composing her next post. Nathan waited without expectations. His relationship with his grandfather had always been different. While his cousins competed for attention and approval, Nathan had chosen his own path, inspired by his father's final advice: "Don't let them turn you into something you're not." "And finally," continued Mr. Harwick, "to Nathan Whitmore, my grandson, I leave this envelope." A heavy silence fell over the room as the lawyer handed Nathan a simple, slightly crumpled envelope. All eyes turned to him, some confused, others barely concealing their amusement. Nathan opened the envelope with slightly trembling fingers. Inside was a single plane ticket. Destination Rome, one way. Preston's laughter broke the silence. "Her trip to Italy, is that it? The old man really knew how to get back at you. Maybe he wants you to bring back a souvenir for us," Mallory added, unable to hide her smile. Nathan stared at the ticket, with dates just 2 weeks away. A note was stapled. "Great players always think several moves ahead." His grandfather's voice echoed in his mind again. "The best moves are the ones your opponent never sees coming." In the modest apartment he shared with a fellow teacher, Nathan contemplated the ticket to Rome spread out on his desk. Next to it, a cup of coffee slowly cooled as he reread his grandfather's note for the 10th time. Through the window, the evening light painted long shadows on the apartment walls. Nathan had spent the last 3 days alternating between confusion, hurt, and curiosity. Why would his grandfather send him to Rome while the others received fortunes? The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was his mother, Grace. "How are you doing, dear?" she asked. her voice carrying that familiar concern. "I'm fine, Mom. Just thinking." "About the ticket?" Nathan sighed, running his fingers through his dark hair. "It doesn't make sense. Why just leave me a ticket? I don't even know what to do in Rome." Grace was silent for a moment. "Your grandfather was always a man of peculiar methods, Nathan. Dennis, your father, always said Roland never did anything without a purpose." "Dad also said Grandpa was stubborn as a mule," Nathan replied, a faint smile forming on his lips. "That too. Do you think I should go?" "What do you have to lose?" The question hung in the air. Nathan looked at the calendar. The school year would end in a week, summer stretching ahead of him. "Maybe it's just his way of saying I should take a vacation," Nathan murmured. "Or maybe it's more," Grace replied. "You and your grandfather, you always had a different connection. Those chess matches meant something to him." Nathan closed his eyes. Remembering his last conversation with his grandfather, Roland had seemed almost regretful. "Trust, Nathan," Roland had said, studying the board between them. "It's the most valuable asset a man can have, and the hardest to regain once lost." His eyes, usually sharp, had softened momentarily. "I failed your father in that regard, a mistake I could never correct." Nathan had never fully understood what had happened between his father and grandfather. Dennis rarely spoke of it, occasionally letting slip comments about hard choices and different paths. "I'm going to Rome," Nathan finally decided. 2 weeks later, Nathan found himself at Leonardo da Vinci International Airport in Rome. The air felt different, warmer, denser, filled with unfamiliar aromas. Exhausted after the transatlantic flight, he followed the flow of passengers to the arrivals area, with no idea what to do next. "Signor Whitmore?" a voice called as he passed through the exit gates. Turning, Nathan found an elderly man holding a sign with his name. The man had gray hair and a warm smile that immediately put Nathan at ease. "I'm Lorenzo," the man introduced himself in English with a strong Italian accent. "Your nonno, your grandfather, arranged everything. Come, please." Dazed, Nathan followed Lorenzo to a black Mercedes parked in the pickup area. "Did you know my grandfather?" Nathan asked as the car glided into the chaotic Roman traffic. Lorenzo smiled through the rearview mirror. "Signor Roland? Yes, for many years he was a good man." "Where are we going?" "Monterey Estate, in the Sabina Hills, about an hour north of Rome. It's a very beautiful place. You will like it." Nathan furrowed his brow. "My grandfather had a property in Italy." Lorenzo seemed surprised. "For 45 years, Signor. He came every September, always alone." The revelation hit Nathan like a physical blow. 45 years. His grandfather had a property in Italy that no one in the American family knew about. As the car wound through the lush hills, leaving the urban chaos of Rome behind, Nathan felt as if he were entering a parallel world, a world his grandfather had kept completely separate from the Whitmore empire everyone else knew. After an hour's drive, the car passed through a wrought-iron gate and climbed a gravel road lined with cypress trees. At the top of the hill, an 18th-century stone villa stood majestically, with vines stretching in every direction as far as the eye could see. "Welcome to Monterey Estate, Signor," Lorenzo announced, parking in front of the main entrance. Nathan got out of the car, awestruck by the beauty of the place. A woman in her 80s was waiting at the entrance, standing tall and elegant, her dark eyes studying him intently. "Nathan," she said, her voice surprisingly strong. "Finally." Before Nathan could respond, she stepped closer, gently touching his face. "You have his eyes," she murmured. "Roland's eyes, when he was young." "Sorry, but who are you?" Nathan asked, confused. The woman smiled, a smile that somehow seemed familiar. "I am Sophia Whitmore," she replied. "Your grandmother." "My grandmother?" Nathan repeated the words as if they were in a foreign language. "I don't understand. My grandmother Elizabeth died before I was born." Sophia gestured for him to follow her into the villa. The interior was just as impressive as the exterior. Terracotta floors, exposed wooden beams, antique furniture mixed with contemporary pieces. "Elizabeth was Roland's American wife," Sophia explained, leading him to a spacious living room with large windows framing the verdant hills. "I am his Italian wife." Nathan slowly sat down in a leather armchair, trying to process what he was hearing. "This isn't possible. My grandfather couldn't have been married to 2 women. Sophia poured 2 glasses of red wine from an open bottle on a side table, and yet he was. She handed a glass to Nathan. For nearly 60 years. Nathan accepted the wine automatically, his mind spinning. How? Roland and I married in 1947, Sophia began, sitting in a chair opposite him. He was stationed here after the war. We met in Rome. He courted me for 3 months, and we married in the village's small church. She pointed to a framed photograph on the wall, a young Roland in military uniform, standing beside a radiant Sophia in a simple wedding dress. A year later, he was called back to serve in the Korean War. It was there he met Elizabeth. She got pregnant. By Vernon, Nathan murmured, starting to understand. Yes. Roland was devastated, torn between two worlds. He came back to me for a few weeks, confessed everything, and said he needed to do the right thing for the American child. Sophia's eyes grew distant, reminiscing. He offered me a divorce. I refused. Why? Sophia smiled sadly. Love, perhaps. Stubbornness, certainly. I told him we made vows before God, and I would keep them. So he just kept 2 families? Nathan asked incredulously. Your grandfather was a complicated man, Nathan. He returned to America, married Elizabeth in a civil ceremony, and raised Vernon as his legitimate son there. But every September for an entire month he came here, for his annual business trip. Nathan took a sip of the wine, surprised by its rich and complex flavor. And you accepted that? At first, I hoped he would eventually choose, that he would realize his place was here. After a few years, Augusto was born, your uncle. After that, well, we established a strange but functional balance. I have an uncle I never met? As if in response to his question, the door to the room opened and a man in his 60s entered. He had the same sturdy build as Roland, but his eyes were dark like Sophia's. Oh, you're finally awake, the man exclaimed, walking up with a warm smile and open arms. I'm Augusto, your uncle. Welcome to the family, nephew. Before Nathan could process it, he was enveloped in a tight embrace that smelled of sun, earth, and some kind of spice he couldn't identify. And these, Augusto continued, pointing to the door where 2 young adults appeared, are your cousins Marco and Elena. Marco, about 25, tall and athletic, waved with an easy smile. Elena, perhaps 2 years younger, with long dark hair and the same piercing eyes as Sophia, stepped forward to kiss Nathan's cheeks in the Italian style. Welcome, cousin, she said in perfect English. We've been looking forward to meeting you. Nathan looked around at these strangers who were his family, feeling simultaneously disoriented and strangely at home. You all knew about me. Of course, Augusto replied, sitting down and pouring himself some wine. Papa always spoke of you. His favorite student, the only one who really learned to play chess. He showed pictures of you whenever he came, Eleanor added. He said you were different from the other American Whitmores. Nathan didn't know whether to feel flattered or even more confused, but he never mentioned any of you. A momentary silence fell over the group. Sophia exchanged glances with Augusto. Roland kept your world separate for decades, Sophia finally explained. It was his greatest regret, but also a pattern he couldn't escape. Until now, interrupted a new voice. Everyone turned. A man in a sharp suit stood at the entrance. It was Mr. Harwick. Mr. Harwick, Nathan exclaimed, surprised. What are you doing here? Fulfilling your grandfather's final instructions, the lawyer replied, placing his briefcase on the table, and delivering the rest of his inheritance. Mr. Harwick opened his briefcase, removing a sealed envelope and a device Nathan recognized as a portable projector. Before we proceed with the legal aspects, the lawyer said, adjusting his glasses, your grandfather left a message for you. He set up the projector on the coffee table, aiming it at a white wall. After some adjustments, the image of Roland Whitmore appeared, not the frail man of recent weeks, but a more robust version, clearly recorded a few months earlier. Nathan, Roland began, his blue-gray eyes fixed on the camera as if he could see through time. If you're watching this, it means you did exactly what I hoped. You took that ticket to Rome and uncovered the other half of my life. Nathan felt his throat tighten. Seeing his grandfather like this, vibrant and direct, was like receiving one last chess match. I must start by apologizing, Roland continued. Not for sending you to Rome with only a ticket and no explanation. That was strategic. He smiled slightly. But for never being completely honest with you or with either side of our families. Roland adjusted himself in his chair, fingers interlacing as he used to do when he was about to make a decisive move in chess. You must be wondering why I left your cousins and your uncle what seemed to be valuable assets, while seemingly leaving you only a trip. The truth, Nathan, is that I gave each of them exactly what they value. Roland's face took on an expression Nathan recognized. It was his checkmate imminent look. Whitmore Shipping Industries is on the verge of bankruptcy. The main contracts were lost to Asian competitors 3 years ago, and I've been keeping the company running mainly with my own capital. Once the accountants update the books, Preston will discover that he inherited more debt than assets. Nathan blinked, startled. The Whitmore fortune, which had always seemed so solid, was a facade. The Manhattan penthouse has 3 mortgages, Roland continued. Mallory will be lucky to keep it for 6 months before the bank takes it back. And the Serenity? It's leased. The leasing company will contact her in about 30 days. The image of Roland leaned forward, his eyes suddenly more intense. The Whitmore family property isn't in better shape. The bank owns 70% of the Hamptons estate, and the investment portfolio has been drained for years to cover Vernon's bad business deals. I gave them all exactly what they've always wanted. Hollow trophies that seem valuable on the outside but have no substance. Nathan felt dazed. The ostentatious Whitmore fortune was nothing but a house of cards. For you, Nathan, Roland smiled genuinely now, I leave something real. You're sitting on it. The camera pulled back, revealing that Roland was sitting in the same room where Nathan now found himself. Whitmore Vineyards International, conservatively valued at $47 million in assets, now belongs to you. 2,000 acres of vineyards in 3 countries, an annual production of 2 million bottles, and a villa with 300 years of history. Nathan looked around the room, seeing it in a completely new light. More importantly, Roland continued, his voice softening, I leave you the family you never knew you had. Sophia, the strongest and most compassionate woman I ever met. Augusto, who turned our little vineyards into an internationally respected wine empire. Marco and Elena, who are everything I hoped the next generation of Whitmores would be. The camera zoomed back in on Roland's face, and for the first time, Nathan saw tears in his grandfather's eyes. I made many mistakes, Nathan. I lived a divided life, hurting people I loved on both sides of the ocean. But you were always different. You have your father's integrity, your mother's compassion, and perhaps a bit of my stubbornness. Roland cleared his throat, composing himself. One last chess prediction. Preston will reach out within a month begging for help. Vernon will follow soon after. How you respond is your decision, but remember that sometimes true generosity isn't giving people what they want, but what they need. The recording ended, Roland's image freezing momentarily before disappearing. The silence in the room was palpable. Nathan looked at Sophia, who was watching him with a mix of sadness and pride. He planned this for years, she said softly, waiting for the right moment. Mr. Harwick cleared his throat, bringing everyone's attention back to the present. If you'll allow me, I have the paperwork for the formal transfer of ownership and associated assets to Mr. Nathan Whitmore. There are also instructions regarding bank accounts, investments, and ongoing management. As the lawyer continued explaining legal details, Nathan felt Elena touch his arm. Are you okay? She asked gently. It's a lot to process all at once. Nathan nodded slowly, still dazed. Why me? Why not Augusto or you guys? Augusto laughed, a rich sound reminiscent of Roland. Oh, don't worry, nephew. Papa left us significant stakes, but he wanted the families to finally unite, and you were the bridge he chose. Besides, Marco added with a playful grin, someone has to deal with the American distribution, and none of us wants to move there. For the first time since he arrived, Nathan laughed. It was an absurd situation. In less than 24 hours, he had discovered a second family, inherited a wine empire, and learned that the ostentatious wealth his American cousins valued so much was as substantial as a house of cards. Days turned into weeks as Nathan absorbed his new reality. Each morning brought a new revelation, tours of the vineyards with Marco, learning about different grapes and cultivation techniques, afternoons in the cellar with Augusto, uncovering the secrets of fermentation and aging, evenings on the terrace with Sophia, listening to stories of Roland as a young sailor, passionate and full of dreams. 23 days after his arrival, Nathan was sitting in the villa's library, studying the company's financial reports, when his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he recognized immediately. Preston, he answered, keeping his voice neutral. Nathan. His cousin's voice sounded tense, devoid of its usual arrogance. We need to talk. I'm listening. A heavy sigh came from the other end. Things aren't good. The company is practically bankrupt. The accountants have found everything. Vernon lost the house. Mallory's penthouse is being mortgaged. A pause. We're ruined. Nathan closed his eyes, remembering his grandfather's prediction, exactly as Roland had said. I'm sorry to hear that, he replied sincerely. Look, I know we've never been close, but you've been in Italy for weeks. The company people are talking. There are rumors about a property, a wine business. Preston's voice took on an almost pleading tone. We need help, Nathan. The family needs help. Nathan surveyed the view of the vineyards through the library window. Neatly organized rows of vines stretched to the horizon, each representing generations of knowledge, hard work, and real passion. There's a position available, Nathan finally said. U.S. Distribution Manager for Irida Vineyards. It includes salary, benefits, an apartment in San Francisco, no ownership stake. The relief in Preston's voice was almost palpable. I accept. Of course I accept. When can I start? Next week. Lorenzo will send the details. After hanging up, Nathan found Sophia watching him from the doorway. You were generous, she commented, moving closer to sit in the chair opposite him. It was fair, Nathan corrected. He needs a fresh start, not a bailout. Sophia smiled, a smile that reminded Nathan so much of Roland that it made his heart ache. You have your grandfather's judgment. He would be proud. In the following weeks, news of the American Whitmore's situation cascaded in. Mallory, after losing her penthouse, reluctantly accepted Nathan's offer to work in marketing for the vineyards. To everyone's surprise, she showed genuine talent when selling something real, not just herself. Within 6 months, she would be involved with Lorenzo's son and end up moving permanently to Rome. Vernon and Beatrice, stripped of their luxurious lifestyle, moved into a small apartment in New Jersey. Vernon found work as an accountant at a local firm, while Beatrice, at 58, secured a job at Nordstrom. The forced humility proved surprisingly refreshing for their marriage. Nathan used his first distribution paycheck to buy a small property in California, with a guest house perfect for his mother. Grace finally retired from nursing and rediscovered her passion for painting, her canvases gradually gaining recognition in local galleries. As for Nathan, he continued teaching, but only part-time. During the summers, he traveled to Italy, learning the business and getting to know his Italian family better. During a chess game with Augusto on the terrace, watching the sunset paint the hills in gold, he had an epiphany. He wasn't just playing chess with me on Sundays, was he? Grandpa, he was preparing me. Augusto moved his bishop, capturing a pawn. Preparing you for what? For this, all of this. Nathan gestured around. For a legacy much greater than money or property. The truth about our origins. A family based on real values. A legacy built on truth, not lies. Augusto smiled, his eyes, so much like Sophia's, twinkling with understanding. Checkmate, nephew. You finally understood the game. A year had passed since Nathan opened that crumpled envelope at the funeral. He was back at Monterey Estate, sitting on the main terrace, watching the morning sun illuminate the vineyards. Autumn was approaching, bringing with it the promise of the harvest. Elena approached, handing him a cup of strong coffee. What are you thinking about so early? Nathan smiled at his cousin, who had become one of his favorite people in the world. About life. How it can change so completely when you least expect it. Elena sat down beside him, taking a deep breath of the fragrant morning air. Changed for the better, I hope. Without a doubt. In the months prior, Nathan had navigated a new balance. He had maintained his job as a teacher, refusing to abandon the profession he loved, but now divided his time between San Francisco, where he oversaw the American operation of the vineyards, and Italy, where he continued learning about winemaking. Preston, to everyone's surprise, thrived in his new role. Freed from the pressure of running an entire company and from the weight of Roland's expectations, he discovered he had a genuine talent for sales and relationship building. Exports to the US had increased 30% under his direction. I got a letter from your mom yesterday, Elena commented, interrupting Nathan's thoughts. She confirmed she's coming for the harvest celebration next month. Nathan nodded, pleased. Grace and Sophia had developed a pen-pal friendship that surprised everyone. Two women who could have been rivals became confidants, united by the love they shared for Roland, despite his flaws, and for the son and grandson who now connected their families. Mallory also confirmed, Elena added with a smile. She and Antonio seem very happy. Who would have imagined? Nathan shook his head, still amazed by his cousin's transformation. The relationship with Antonio, Lorenzo's son, had revealed a side of Mallory that no one in the American family had ever suspected. Warm, funny, and surprisingly down-to-earth. Her social media channel now featured videos about Italian culture, artisanal wines, and sustainable living, attracting a more mature and engaged audience. "And Vernon and Beatrice?" Eleanor asked. "They're coming for Christmas," Nathan responded. For the first time, Uncle Vernon said he really wants to meet Augusto. "I think losing everything made him rethink a lot." Nathan stood up, walking to the terrace railing. From there he could see workers moving among the vines, checking the grapes that would soon be ready for harvest. It was a sight that filled him with awe. The continuity, the connection to the land, the fruit of honest labor. "You know what's funny?" he said, turning to Eleanor. "When everyone laughed at me at the funeral, when I opened that envelope and saw just a plane ticket, I felt so humiliated, like my grandfather was punishing me for not being like the rest of the family." Elena joined him at the railing. "And now I realize that crumpled envelope wasn't just a ticket. It was an invitation to discover who I really was, where I truly came from." Nathan paused, looking out at the distant hills. And what really matters? Nathan's phone rang, interrupting the moment. It was Marco. "You need to come to the main cellar," his cousin said, his voice buzzing with excitement. "Augusto is opening something special." In the cellar, cool and fragrant with aromas of oak and fermented grapes, Augusto awaited with a dusty bottle. Sophia was beside him, her dark eyes shining with memories. "What is this?" Nathan asked, approaching. "The first vintage," Augusto replied, "from 1951. The first one your grandfather and my mother produced together. There are only 3 bottles left." With careful reverence, Augusto removed the cork from the ancient bottle. The aroma that escaped was complex: dried fruits, spices, a hint of leather and earth. "Normally a wine doesn't last this long," he explained as he poured small amounts into crystal glasses. "But this one is special, like the truth. Sometimes it stays buried for years, decades even, but when it finally emerges, it becomes something more valuable than if it had been revealed immediately," Sophia finished. They raised their glasses in a silent toast. Nathan let the deep, ruby liquid touch his lips. It was incredible, delicate yet powerful, with layers of flavor that slowly revealed themselves. "When your grandfather first came to Rome," Sophia said, her voice soft with memories, "he was just a young sailor with a dream. One day, he told me, I'll build something that will last generations. I think he finally did." Nathan thought about the cousins and uncle who had spent their lives chasing symbols of wealth, always wanting more, always competing for the patriarch's favor. And then he thought about his father, who had chosen a different path, and how that path had indirectly led Nathan to this moment. "To true legacy," Nathan toasted, raising his glass. "To family," Augusto replied. "To Roland," Sophia added, a solitary tear sliding down her wrinkled cheek, "who finally found a way to unite his worlds." As the afternoon sun filtered through the cellar windows, casting golden rays over the oak barrels, Nathan felt a peace he had never experienced. His grandfather's longest chess game had ended, and all the moves finally made sense. The crumpled envelope that everyone had ridiculed contained the most precious gift of all. Not a fortune, not a title, but a truth that liberated and a family that embraced. Nathan smiled, imagining his grandfather watching everything, perhaps with that little satisfied smile that always appeared when he executed a brilliant move on the chessboard. Checkmate, indeed. If you enjoyed this touching story about family, truth, and legacies that truly matter, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your reactions are what motivate us to keep bringing heartfelt narratives.